All right, so my greenhouse is filled with delicious, delicious basil and summer basil, and of course winter is coming soon, and so I'd like to preserve some of this summer flavor, but the question is, how do you do that without killing yourself? And the problem, of course, is botulism. A lot of people suggest drying your basil. There's lots of videos on YouTube about how to do that. I don't really like dried basil. I think that it takes all the oil out of it, and I just don't think that it gives me the same taste of summer. And so what a lot of people do is they suggest infusing it in oil. And that's what I'm gonna do. The problem with infusing basil in oil is that it can give you botulism. Botulism is either a spore or it's in the active form, and the goal here is to keep the spore from becoming active. The issue is when you drop basil into oil and then you keep it either at room temperature or in the fridge, you're giving it the perfect environment to make the spore grow into the active toxin, the bacteria, to make poison basically, because it requires a pH below 4.6 or so, it requires an anaerobic situation, and it requires temperatures around 38 or above 38, and a lot of fridges are around 40. So what I'm gonna do to prevent all of these problems is very simple. I'm simply gonna take a big clove or two of garlic. I'm gonna take some basil here, and you can see that I chopped it really rough, and I also left a lot of the stem on. My reasoning for doing that is what I will almost certainly be doing with this is frying it up in the wintertime with meat. And if I'm making a spaghetti sauce or something else where I want to have basil in it, I don't mind a little of the stem. I think that that's perfectly fine. So I'm just gonna fill this in here with quite a bit of this, like this, and then I'm simply gonna drizzle some olive oil on it. Food, by the way, should be a olive oil delivery system. If you're not eating olive oil every day, you really should be. It's one of the best things you can put in your body. In fact, before I made this video, I took a shot of olive oil, just like people would take a shot of alcohol. And I'm gonna let that settle down there a bit, get down in there. And basically all I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna rinse and repeat this for another jar or two, depending on how much basil I still have out in my greenhouse. And then I'm simply gonna take the jar and I'm gonna walk over to my handy dandy freezer and stick it in there. So I highly recommend that if you wanna make an infused oil with some of your summer herbs and or garlic, that you do not leave it in the refrigerator for more than about a week or so, and that you freeze it. I could also have brought the oil up to at least 250 degrees and kept it there according to the USDA for at least 20 minutes. But I think that would ruin the basil, quite frankly. And at least by freezing it, now I can simply scoop it out this winter into a pan and then fry onions in it, fry meat in it, etc. That way I'm getting the excellent olive oil, which is so good for you, and some of the summer basil, which I have a ton of right now, and I'm lucky to have in my greenhouse. So that's my thoughts on how to prevent botulism. I highly recommend you do your own research, of course, whenever it comes to food. But it seems to me that I'm all about freedom and all about taking risks and all of that, and I totally support that. But I don't think we want to grow our own food just to give ourselves even the potential issues of botulism, which of course can be fatal. What's the point of ignoring all of science just to take a silly risk? So I say use your own judgment and your own scientific research, but that's what I've concluded. I'm gonna freeze this rather than try to heat it, or rather than try to keep it in my fridge, or rather than keep it on the counter, or do any of those things. Just knowing about how the botulism spore becomes and turns into active poison, and it requires those certain environments, and you can remove those by freezing. You're not gonna kill the spore, but you're not gonna let the spore produce the poison. And that to me is obviously one of the most important ways to prevent botulism. So check out your sources and see what you can do, but if you want to do it, that's what I highly recommend, is just freeze it. Thanks.